Each month, I count down the top 10 hottest games as per BoardGameGeek's daily hotness stats. Hundreds of different games appear on this list every single month, with some of them just rocketing up the chart, but not actually reaching the top 10, and therefore going unmentioned in that list. So, you know what I did? You know what I did? I recently also started tracking the top 10 games that have momentum, but don't hit the top 10, also known as Momentum. Hey, I'm Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise, and first up is a game that demonstrates that classic games can still kindle the collective imagination of gamers as opposed to just the latest Kickstarters. Because rising 25 spots from number 88 to 63 this month is 2012's War of the Ring 2nd edition by Ares Games. In War of the Ring, one player takes control of the Free Peoples, the other player controlling the Shadow Armies. Now, initially, the Free People nations are reluctant to take up arms against Sauron, so they must be attacked by Sauron or persuaded by Gandalf or his companions before they actually start to fight properly. And all this political hoo-ha is represented by the political hoo-ha track, which shows if a nation is ready to fight in the war against the War of the Ring, is the battle. And then the real adventure begins. Launching 32 spots this month from number 59 to 27 is the cooperative trick-taking game The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9 from Cosmos, which places players on a team of astronauts on a series of 50 different space adventures. Success will only be achieved if the team can work together to accomplish shared and individual tasks, making communication essential. However, it's not going to be so simple, because several restrictions on sharing information are introduced throughout the various missions, keeping things a challenge. Now, a German version of the game has been out for quite a while, and the English translation is currently scheduled to arrive later this month. Climbing up 34 spots from number 49 to 15 is It's a Wonderful World, in which players will develop a retro-futuristic empire by utilizing various cards that enhance their production power, allowing them to build even more cards, further increasing their production power. Now, to out-develop their competitors, players will need to carefully plan and grow their production potential, eventually conquering their competitors and achieving total global domination over all forms of man and beast. That line was a lot funnier if I wouldn't mess it up. Now this month, a successful Kickstarter campaign funded a new expansion and a reprint of the game, which funded in 20 minutes and raised 23 times the amount of its funding goal, in what must have been a wonderful day for It's a Wonderful World. Making a huge leap of 39 spots to go from 107 up to 68 is Tiny Towns by AEG, a game in which players act as mayors of towns that are relatively small in scale and stature. And that is because land and resources are scarce, so players need to carefully concoct thriving towns by cleverly placing resources in specific layouts to construct buildings, which then score victory points in various ways. Tiny Town's renewed interest is possibly due, in part, to a brand new expansion called Tiny Town's Fortune, which lets players gain, store, and spend coins to assist them in their venture. I assume that the coins are also comparatively small, but I do admit that that's just an assumption that I've made, so I apologize. Not perfect, so let's move on. Next up is Underwater Cities by Delicious Games, which floats up 40 spots from 147 up to 107 this month. Now, warning, says this game, the human population is That's not the way I was supposed to read that at all. Warning, the human population is overflowing. Oh, fortunately, that's the way I was supposed to read it. Fortunately, the people of Earth have a simple solution: to construct new housing far beneath the surface of the sea. Yes, that right there, that was mankind's go-to plan, not scientifically increasing the food supply or innovating irrigation in any way or form, but no, under ocean dwelling, so cool. By strategically placing multi-use cards, players can benefit from the advantages and gather raw materials, build city domes, and activate other cards. Underwater Cities has had an uptick in activity lately, probably because its expansion, New Discoveries, was released within the past month. This expansion includes several modules that players can integrate into the game, adding several new waterlogged options. And even though I may be all wet for saying it, I think that this is a good opportunity for a quick break for a word from our sponsor, who's going to show us a product which I'm sure will be as relevant to our lives as solving the population crisis by constructing housing thousands of feet below the crushing pressures of the briny blue deep. Gaining 55 spots to climb from 124 up to 69 this month is 2011's Mage Knight board game by WizKids. In this cooperative adventure, players control one of 4 powerful Mage Knights and work together to conquer cities that have been taken control of by the Atlantean Empire. To have any chance of succeeding, players must build strong armies, create powerful decks of spells and actions, and explore caves and dungeons. Now, Mage Knight also offers competitive and solo rules for added variety, and even though it's the oldest game on this month's list, it's about to get revitalized by an upcoming digital version being developed by Dire Wolf Digital. And while this digital version was announced in January, an estimated release date for it is, well, still not yet determined. Up next is Aeon's End by Action Phase Games and Indie Boards and Cards, which ended this month by climbing 72 spots from 121 up to 49. In this game, players work cooperatively to defend the underground city of Gravehold from the Nameless. Even though calling them the Nameless technically does give them a name. I mean, think about it, it's just the science. Anyway, that's just one thing that players have to deal with in this game. Players will only be successful in defeating this totally named threat if they can effectively use their unique abilities, powerful spells, and their collective wits. Aha! The buzz generated for Aeon's End is most likely due to a successful Kickstarter campaign in February, which financed its second standalone expansion, which does have a name, that name being Outcasts. Conquering 73 spots, rising from 151 up to 78 this month, is the upcoming Imperial Struggle from GMT Games, which some would call the spiritual successor to one of the most highly rated games of all time, Twilight Struggle. But instead of the Cold War, this two-player game depicts the 18th century rivalry between France and Britain. Additionally, the game's scope increases beyond just the wartime conflict, requiring players to also build the foundations of colonial wealth, deal with other nations in Europe, and compete for glory. And while all of that sounds really extensive, the publisher's description promises that Imperial Struggle will be a low complexity game that's playable in, quote, a short evening. Which I'm not actually sure if that refers to the estimated 2 to 4 hour length, or that means that the game can only be played during the winter months when the sun sets earlier, making the evenings very short. You know what? No. I respect you too much as a viewer to even attempt to finish that joke. So instead, I'm just going to continue. Gaining 74 spots, going from 140 up to 66, is Eclipse: Second Dawn of the Galaxy. This new edition of the game revises and upgrades several elements of the original Eclipse base game from 2011, including new graphic design, while maintaining the acclaimed symbology of the first edition, an introductory short story by award-winning science fiction novelist Johanna Sinisalo, a full line of Ship Pack 1 miniatures, new miniatures for Ancients, GCDS, orbitals, and more, plus custom plastic inlays, custom combat dice, and finely tuned gameplay. So if you like your epic space operas, don't let the sun go down on this new version of Eclipse. And topping this month is the only game to have climbed more than 100 spots, gaining 136 spots to go from 162 up to 26, and be crowned this month's biggest climber, The King's Dilemma by Horrible Guild. In this interactive narrative and legacy experience, players represent the various houses who are leading the government of the Kingdom of Ankist because apparently the king himself has developed a bad case of analysis paralysis because he just can't bring himself to make decisions anymore. And so, the council, represented by the players, must resolve the kingdom's conundrums on his behalf. The game's campaign features several branching storylines, with each decision that the group makes determining how the story proceeds. But every decision has consequences, and what's good for the kingdom may be bad for a specific player's family. And so, do you save the kingdom or save yourself? And there's the games with the most momentum as of March 2020. Until next time, I've been Chaz Marlar from Pair of Dice Paradise, and take care. Add a little bit of divine intervention to your dice rolls with either this Dice or Devil Angel pin strapped to your lapel, lanyard, backpack, or other pinnable surface. Roll with grace and confidence with either one of these 1-inch enamel pins by your side.